Last year, I started shooting with film to pay an homage to my father using his camera that he shot through the 1960s and 1970s. After I started doing that, I started to get these crazy ideas of things I wanted to do with film that I'd never tried before. Chris managed to get me to buy a Bessa R2A, which I actually think is one of the better purchases I've ever made in a camera. Then I started seeing stuff from David Amell, a friend of ours who's also been on the PetaPixel podcast, and he shoots a lot of panoramics. Now, I got really interested in that until I saw the price of a panoramic film camera. Then I balked. So then I started thinking, how could I get the panoramic look without spending panoramic film camera money and film developing costs? Why not anamorphic? This gives me the same general idea, but I don't have to change anything else about my setup, right? I'm Jaron Schneider. This is PetaPixel. Let's go down this rabbit hole.
You've made a mistake. When my buddy Jaron told me he was going to start making episodes for the PetaPixel YouTube channel, my first response was, oh great, you get to experience the wonders of audio.com. Let me tell you about Audio, because they have an enormous library of hand-selected music. They don't just take any old trash. They go through to make sure they only have compelling music. And how do you pick one? Do you just scroll through endless libraries? No, they've got some wonderful AI-based tools. You can just punch in a link to a song that you really like, and it will find something similar on Audio's rights-free library. Or say you're like, I don't know, I've got this scene where a guy is shooting an anamorphic lens in Japan. I can just type that into the Hans AI tool, and it's gonna give me 6 songs that it thinks would be good options, and I can basically guarantee you at least one of those is gonna be absolutely perfect for the scene. But remember those AI tools that I mentioned? Well, they're exclusive to Audio Pro members. But don't worry, I got you covered, because you can get a 70% discount off an Audio Pro annual membership, giving you access to all those AI tools and Audio's entire music and sound effects library. So click the link in the description below and use coupon code PetaPixel to get started with Audio today. Thanks for sponsoring this episode.
We should first do a little bit of an explanation on what anamorphic actually is. Anamorphic lenses take a field of view and squeeze it down, so it's a wider field of view that's compressed into a smaller frame. This idea was originally developed for tank pilots during World War I so that they could actually have a wider field of view. It was later used in cinema to create this wide cinematic look that we basically associate with any film these days. These lenses were used off and on from the 1950s all the way into the late 1990s until they sort of fell off in popularity because of the drawbacks compared to the traditional spherical lens design. Spherical refers to the lenses you probably know for your Sony, Canon, Nikon cameras. They came back in popularity once digital sensors improved their low light capability. One of the downsides of anamorphic lenses is that they tend to be slower. So when sensors got more sensitive, people could go back to using anamorphics and not really be worried about the major downside. Our friends at Moment wrote a little bit about this that explains it the best. Let me read it to you. When it comes to lenses, there are 2 main camps, spherical and anamorphic. Spherical lenses are the standard go-to, delivering images that match the sensor's aspect ratio with no funny business. What you see is what you get. Anamorphic lenses, however, play with the image a bit more creatively, squishing the frame along its longer dimension. This squeeze means you'll need to stretch things back out in post-production or when projecting, but the payout is that signature cinematic look. By compressing the image horizontally, anamorphic lenses let you capture those ultra-wide shots even with standard-sized sensors while delivering gorgeous overall bokeh and fewer pesky aberrations than their spherical counterparts. It's no wonder these lenses are a favorite for creating epic, unforgettable visuals. Most people know what anamorphic looks like, even if they don't know that they know. The most famous people to use this effect are probably J.J. Abrams during the height of his popularity. Like, go watch Star Trek, all of the Star Trek movies, you'll see just these wide shots with big bands of horizontal lines from all of the highlights in the frame. That kind of like flare is really what anamorphic is known for. Christopher Nolan also uses this, so does Michael Bay. It's become quite common. High-end anamorphic lenses will typically have a squeeze ratio of 2 times, but more affordable ones these days are either 1.33 or 1.5. The Laowa Nanomorph that I use is a 1.5. The reason I went with this one and not like an Atlas lens is because Atlas lenses are extremely expensive. We're talking between $10,000 and $25,000 an optic. I wasn't willing to put that much risk in that I might break it if I was to use an Atlas lens. I don't have that much confidence in myself. Anamorphic lenses have gotten a little bit more custom over the years. You typically will associate anamorphic shots with a blue flare, but the Laowa Nanomorph actually allows you to pick among amber, blue, and silver. Amber is the base one, and that's the option that I have here. You can see that from the amber color of the ring around the lens. One other thing to note about anamorphic lenses is that their iris is actually kind of ovular and not circular. So that's what is causing that squeeze look and what's really stretching those flares. Really, the only thing you need to take away from this, if you're just concerned about how I'm getting these super wide looks with just a standard looking lens, is that anamorphic will take a wide view and compress it. On the negative, I will pull that and then do what is called de-squeezing. A lot of cameras in video can do this in camera so that the preview that you see makes it easier to catch focus, but for the purposes of this, I'm only gonna do this completely in post once the photo is taken. I will drop it onto a Photoshop document that I've created that is the exact ratio that it should be, drop the picture into the middle, and then pull it to the edges to de-squeeze the frame. The result is a panoramic photo that was taken on a 35mm frame. Side note, it's kind of funny, if you put these on an iPhone and you look at them in like your photo library, the iPhone actually thinks it's a panoramic picture because it's so wide. When I realized that my desire to shoot wide panoramic photos wasn't gonna subside, I started looking at all the options that I could do, and my original concept was to take a modern anamorphic lens and put it on my dad's Nikon FTN, because this is really the camera that really got me back into shooting film. And unfortunately, there are no film SLRs that have the right flange back distance to work with adapters. So it's not actually possible to put an EF lens onto this body with an adapter. So then I had to think, okay, what could I do? Luckily, Chris Nichols actually convinced me to buy another film camera last year, the Bessa R2A. This is a rangefinder that uses the Leica M mount. M mount is very adaptable, which means I can put anything I want on it. And that's how we ended up with this. I have on here 3 parts. First is the Bessa R2A. Really light and small, so this part's great. Next up was to get an adapter, and that's what this is. All it does is take the M mount and adapt it to whatever the lens is, in this case, Canon EF. Final piece of the puzzle is this, the Laowa Nanomorph 32mm t2.9 anamorphic lens. Together, it goes from something small and light to something much, much bigger. This whole combination, without any film in the body, weighs 1,600-ish grams. That's 4/5 of a noct. That's heavy. We don't want anything that heavy, usually around our necks. But for this, I was willing to make an exception. I should mention that while I'm not buying a brand new camera system, buying a Laowa Nanomorph still isn't what I would call cheap. It's an affordable full-frame anamorphic lens, but it's still $1,500, so my upfront cost isn't going down that much, but I thought of it more of a savings over time since I could take a full roll of 35mm film and shoot all 36 frames with an anamorphic lens, getting a wide-angle photo for each frame, as opposed to what most panoramic photos do, which is take them across a wider strip of it, or shoot it on 120, which is also more expensive per shot. I mentioned that there were going to be some downsides that I was going to have to combat with when I was using this on a film camera. And one of them is that the lenses aren't typically very fast. T2.9 is about, what you'd think f3 is, which is obviously not super fast. The other issue is because of the flange back distance problem that I was having, I can't use any through the lens focusing. I can't actually see exactly what the lens sees. I sort of have to guess, because this is a rangefinder. Rangefinders just use that box in the little rangefinder window that's usually coupled to a lens. These lenses aren't coupled, meaning I was either going to have to actually accurately measure my distance to the subject and set that on the focus ring, or I was going to shoot at infinity. I opted to typically shoot at infinity. Shooting at infinity means that, well, my shots were all going to be wide sweeping vistas, which is actually fine. That's what I was going for. The other problem is that because I can't see what I'm shooting, I really just have to guess. the Voigtlander Bessa R2A does have a 35mm frame guideline that comes through here, but this is a 32mm lens, so it would be slightly wider than that. On top of that, this rangefinder is mostly blocked by this lens. When I'm looking through it, this whole section, so this whole half here, is just taken up by lens, meaning when I'm composing my shot, I actually can't see most of it. So I sort of, again, have to guess. Luckily, the light meter in the R2A works great with this lens, so as long as I was able to adjust the iris, I could see what my shutter speed should be right in the camera. Actually shooting this is pretty difficult. I mentioned that it's heavy, it's 4/5 of a noct, and it's all sort of front weighted. So when I'm shooting this, I'm typically like this, holding it, and it's just kind of a lot. I don't have a lot of confidence that I'm going to be able to use slower shutter speeds, and combined with the aforementioned T2.9 iris, I wasn't able to really shoot that much that confidently unless I was at 1/60th of a second. I found that my hit rate at 1/30th, which is typical that I'm able to handle that when I'm handholding other cameras, it wasn't very good. So I tried to hit 1/60th. That really changed what I could shoot. So what I wanted to do was eventually I was like, well, I'm going to try and get those really cool flare lines, but I can only get those at night. So I would shoot at night. And that was hard because I don't have a lot of light transmittance. The other issue is that film is not very fast, at least not color film. I shot this project mainly on Ektar 100 and Portra 800. Portra 800 was absolutely a necessity for shooting at night, and it still didn't really give me that much sensitivity. You would be surprised how spoiled you've become if you've been shooting on digital for years. Moving over to film, it's very difficult to get anything in even medium low light. The other problem I encountered with this setup is that these are smooth focus rings and smooth iris rings, which means I'll take my photo, I'll make sure I'm set to infinity and I'm at the right T-stop, I'll take it, and then I'll set the camera down or hold it in my hand, and as I'm walking, my hand is moving this focus ring. I cannot tell you how many times I accidentally moved the focus ring without realizing I had, didn't check it, took a picture, looked at my camera and realized, oh shoot, that's gonna be way out of focus. It happened a lot. When you switch from digital to film, you'll notice how much slower shooting in film is. You really do slow way down, especially if you're using a lot of manual things like I am, like a rangefinder or my dad's FTN. While moving to this setup, it gets even slower. It is what I can describe best as a plodding, deliberate process. There is no quick shot with this camera. You really have to think about what you're shooting and take that photo carefully. So I shot about 8-9 rolls of film using this setup. I don't actually think many of these photos are very good. I could argue that almost all of the photos are bad. But I want to show you some examples, so I have about 20 here worth looking at so you get an idea of what's possible. After developing and scanning and de-squeezing, the final photo is most akin to like a 6x12 large format FOV, but it's obviously not that. It was taken in a much smaller frame. Some of the photos came out pretty good. I like Ektar, so my Ektar photos are the ones that I'm most happy with, but I didn't shoot a ton of Ektar because it's a really slow film. Most of my Portra I'm like less okay with. They're not my favorite, but they are a good example of what's possible. One other thing I tried, which I'm not even sure if I like it, is shooting in portrait orientation. This results in some really, really tall pictures. One photo I actually like sort of kind of plays on the height that you get from these images. There's a rock climber on the side of a mountain, and it sort of like goes with the theme of how tall this journey for them is. But other than that, I feel sort of meh about the other tall pictures that I took. They just didn't really vibe with me in the same way. One other thing worth noting is that, none of these photos are what I would call sharp, at least, not compared to digital pictures, but you know, there's something nice about that. None of my film photos tend to come out super sharp anyway, so this doesn't bother me that much. So, looking back at all my results, deciding on whether or not I would recommend this, I don't know. I didn't love using this lens to take pictures. This whole setup is just not what I would call fun. It's a fun experiment, but the actual process of making images was very tedious. Something else that I wish I had done differently was focus more on just making pretty photos and not trying to play on the fact that this is an anamorphic lens. I realized for a while that I was sort of just laser focused on using this lens to get those lens flares that happen with anamorphic lenses, and I just don't really think that was smart. I probably should have focused more on getting pretty light as opposed to pretty flares. But on the other hand, some of the pictures I took I very much like. I might frame one of them, which you could argue means that I liked the result. After this whole experiment being over, I find myself just on the hunt for a Fujifilm TX1 or a Hasselblad X-Pan. Those are probably going to be the only way to get the photos that I really envision myself getting. And I see myself making tons and tons of mistakes with them en route to me getting even 1/10 as good as David Amell is. Given that there aren't any other options for you if you want to shoot anamorphic on film, I'm kind of torn on whether it's worth it. It's really heavy. Not that a panoramic camera is any lighter. I guess this is more versatile?
No.
Okay, well, I had a good time. I'm probably not going to do it again though. So, Chris, you want to do the things? I can't remember how you end videos. Yeah, how do you end a video?
Oh, yeah, so like leave your comments below. We really love to see those.
Yeah.
We also answer them often on the podcast.
Yeah, the PetaPixel podcast, which you can...
No, I'm doing...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the PetaPixel podcast. We look at the comments there. You can find it on all your favorite podcasting apps. Just search for PetaPixel podcast. And there's also this website that we're associated with. I think it's called PetaPixel.com, I'm pretty sure. And you write articles on there. Don't speak. Hush. He writes articles on there, and you can see those. And if you get a PetaPixel membership, you can watch those. You read them without any distracting ads. Just glorious photos and wonderful information and beautiful alliteration. And yeah, you definitely want to get that because there's also discounts at the merch store. And you also get
the shirt.
Oh yeah, you can get this shirt, Film on Location, you cowards, and then you'll get 25% off being brave. That's cool. And also you can download all the photos from the. You can download all the photos from like all the cameras and lenses that we review, so you definitely want to check that out. Okay, I'm sorry, you speak.
That's it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.